If it was just governance, they would have had it written by now, but us members of management go over and keep interfering.
Okay, this is the last part of the meeting. I need to move an extension, so I'll move it. I seconded with Dave. All right, so the motion, got a motion. Can we get the motion on the board when you're ready? So the way we'll handle this is we'll put the motion on the board. Richard's going to speak to it. Then we'll have questions. And after questions, we can debate. If somebody wants to put up an amendment, they can. Okay. So can we get a staff member to read it out, please? Yeah, democracy.
No, it's big enough now. That's way too big.
Is it? Excuse me, governance manager. Is there two motions, is it?
We'll do it two parts because
Okay.
otherwise you might.
Right.
Right. First part of the motion. Council approves a rate increase of 12.5% to existing taxpayers.
Where did 0.5 come from?
That one, sorry. to existing ratepayers for the 2017-18 financial year. Second part of the motion, Council establishes an elected member task force group to oversee the development of the annual plan 2017-18 consultation document, which reflects the changes approved at this meeting. Council appoint elected whomever to the elected member task force group. The consultation document is presented to Council for approval on 6 April. Consultation period will be 7 April 2017 to 7 May 2017. The 18th of May is set aside to allow Council to hear community views. Is that all of it?
Can we just by default always put the year after 18th of May? Is that just, now it's obvious, but one day it won't be.
Looking back on it, historically,
When I'm an old man, I'll look back on this one. That was the day we shot ourselves. Oh, what?
too late in the night. Right. So the Mayor is moving a motion. I think we're taking it in two parts, Mr Mayor. The first part is a rates increase of 12%. My presentation very earlier today, we talked about the position that Council is in, and largely the position we're in is a product of growth and the pressures of growth, as well as some of the decisions made to date, to be honest, and the impact that has on the numbers. So I'd like to draw your attention to page 83 of this good book, which is the second to last page of your agenda, which is really quite heartwarming to know we're on the last page. And basically, we are supposed to have for the 2018-19 a surplus of $7 million. For various reasons, we've got a deficit of $5 million, which is around about a $12 million reduction, which, and as you can see by that dotted line, and that's where that $7 million should be. So, sorry, I get it clear, I'm a bit tired, my apologies. You follow the dotted line, effectively that talks about where the 10-year plan budget should be.
Sorry, which of these graphs are you
I'm not sorry, Councillor Mallett. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
The bottom one there, the dotted line is the 2015-25 10-year plan and where our balanced budget should be. So that's our balanced budget as we define it. Due to various decisions made by previous council, the green line, that is reflected by the green line, and then the blue line reflects the impact of both the green and decisions made today. So that puts us down for the next financial period. Sorry, Councillor Leary. So basically, do you want me to start again?
Yeah, sorry, it's late.
Yeah, no, it is late, and you're probably having an issue with me explaining it. So firstly, the dotted line is the 10-year plan balancing budgets number. So, for example, if you look at 2019, that number is about $7 million. We were forecasting for next year a $7 million surplus. Due to the decisions that were made in previous annual plans, that is reflected in the green bar, and then on top of that, the decisions made today are reflected in the blue bar, drop us down to a $5 million deficit. That's a $12 million movement. If we want to get ourselves back online with our financial strategy as it currently stands, and this is not precluding the debate that has to happen about our financial strategy enduring through the 10-year plan period, we need to basically increase our revenue by approximately 12% to do that. So, Councillor, sorry, apologies, the Mayor has put...
You say increase our revenue by such and such.
Our rate, I meant, sorry, Councillor Mallett.
Well, in order to get back to a balanced budget or the 200% or whichever it is we're trying to achieve, we have to improve our position, our operating position by that amount.
That's right.
That can be done by increasing revenue or reducing expenditure.
Yeah. That's correct.
Okay, so it's not, yeah, okay. Now, I understand that the mood is to increase revenue,
Yes,
but...
You're correct.
Yeah. So
You're
just,
correct.
Yeah.
We could drop costs, increase revenue, or a combination of both.
Yeah. So improve our operating result by that
Yep,
figure. Yeah.
$12 million.
Yep, thank you.
That's correct. And effectively that translates to about 12%, a little bit short of 12%.
So if we choose to improve our operating revenue only by operating results only by increasing revenue, that results in a 12% rate increase.
That's correct.
Yep, okay.
And effectively that gets us back on target for the surpluses we've previously identified, and that shores us up further for a solid base for us to leverage our growth expenditure going forward. If we don't do that, we're further disadvantaging ourselves in terms of future expenditures, future revenues, and ultimately it makes our challenge even harder when it comes to our debt to revenue in respect to the Housing Infrastructure Fund and other growth investments.
Okay, if we put in 12%, where does that put the bars, the blue bar, for the next 2 years, say?
Basically, for the 19 period, it puts it back to the dotted line. 7
million.
Yes, and then the other on top.
Sorry, I can't quite understand your years. That says 2019.
18, 19. So I agree, it's a year out, but I'm saying that we've got to, you're right, it is a year out. But with the growth pressures we're facing, I believe that we should actually do that sooner rather than later and get on with it, to be fair.
It's just your years underneath. Because the way I'm reading this, next year is 1 million or zero.
Yep.
So net, you would get that blue bar up to the amount that it was raised by, say, if
Well,
it's $12 million, it would go up in...
No,
Councillor McPherson's right.
It's not what I'm... If I run a ruler straight up above 2018, which is next year, and we're talking about 1 million or zero for the blue.
Yep. So we're balanced.
And that's not 7 million. The dotted line's on about 2 million.
Yep. So our balanced budget for this year balances, plus or minus. We've lost $2 million. We're zero. I'm suggesting, and you're right. I'm looking at the 2000.
Hang on. You keep saying for this year. Well, I'm sorry. 2017 is plus 2 million.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I'll step through it then. So you're right. In 2018, our projected surplus was $2 million.
No, 2017 it says here. I'm looking at your graph. It's in front of me.
So is it actually a really good call? So is 2017 the end of the year or start of the period?
No, so 2018 is the annual plan year that we're looking ahead to. And so what this chart shows is the adjusted, so the original long-term plan would have had us at a surplus of $2 million. This is the green bar represents the adjusted 10-year plan, so that's already baked in some of the changes that we made last year. So that is the adjusted 10-year plan forecast sort of before we kind of made any decisions today. So as a result of the decision today, that number is at zero, I think is what yeah. So that's for the year ending 30th of June next year. Correct.
2018.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So that's for the year ending June 2018, and that's the annual plan year that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
So if we made this decision that is up on the board, then rather than be a zero in 2018 for that blue bar, that would actually go straight up to 11 or $12 million or whatever that number is.
And that, okay,
18.
That's what I was trying to work out. So that's way above the projected, the last LTP.
That's correct.
Because that should have been, I'm reading that right, about 2 million rather than 12 million. It's about 10 million above that.
Yes, and the reason I'm the reason that I'm discussed this with the Mayor and he suggested it is ultimately because with all the growth pressures we're confronted with, it's probably better to align sooner rather than later and get our base right, which also addresses the gap in 2019 of about a $5 million deficit.
And 20.
Yeah, so before I would want to decide on that top line, I'd want to see what would happen to the graph with some other possibilities. Let's say, for example, half of your boost that you need over and above applied in the coming financial year and half in the following year. What happens then? Because the real deficit, blue line, is actually not next year, it's in the following year. So what would, we can shoot it way up there now, or we can shoot it halfway up there and halfway the next year. what does that do to these blue lines, blue bars? For instance, have we got someone that can, I mean, if you're doing this thing visually, which is quite handy, it's quite handy to see that. I don't know whether that, is there any smart city proponents still left in the room amongst the staff?
I don't think there was any smart city proponents at the beginning, was there?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where would it, where would it,
tough. Yeah, so
if for example, we've got a 3.8%, which is a sort of
baked
flat
into these
line,
numbers already.
0.
It's baked into these numbers already.
Yeah. So if we added 6%, if we took that up to 9% this year, where would the...
So when you say 9%, does that mean 3 plus 8 plus...
Well, I don't know, just a flat 9%. I'm just picking examples so I can see what it does, the graph. Let's say it was 9%. Where would, instead of 0, where would that put the blue?
This is rather crude, but whatever the dollar amount of the rates that we would increase this year is essentially what that blue bar would, so for the 2018 year.
So 3.8 up to 9 is 5.2 million. Well, that would put the line at 5.2 million approximately?
So 5.2% doesn't equal 5.2 million. So basically, for every $1 million is about 0.69% rate increase.
Okay, so 0.69, as any staff member got a calculator, otherwise I'll get my own bloody one out. I mean, seriously, we should have someone helping us with this.
7.5 million.
5.2, and 9%, what does that deliver you in the blue line next year?
Sorry, what do you start with?
7.5
million roughly for rates?
7.5 million.
So I'd take it up to 7.5, and then what would it do if you said, okay, well, we accept we need to fine 12%, and there's another 6%, 6 point something to go in the second year, where would that get you that year?
So that's effectively the same amount again, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't quite, I wasn't adding 6% on, I was only adding 5.2% and then 6.8% to make it 12%. That's pretty crude, and it's not cumulative. But I mean, I'm just trying to see, is there a way without going that extreme that gets you in the same position after 2 years?
Oh, absolutely. And we can spread it over as many years, you know.
Well, the big gaps in the second year, and Andrew's point is let's face that issue in the first year, and I'm saying, yeah, I understand that, but is there a way of solving the same problem over 2 years?
Yes, there is.
And what would those figures look like then? And what would have to be our rate increase in the second year?
Well, we can do 6% in each year, and that's basically half the 12 million.
So if you said 9.8% each year, is that what you...
Yes.
Then you would end up in the... we would end up... What sort of position would we end up as far as our debt and our readiness for the growth and things like that?
Yep.
That's, well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to...
Absolutely.
Could I be helpful here?
Yes, please.
Okay, I will be helpful as far as Councillor Dave's questions are concerned, because I think they're quite valid. We did, when Tracy's predecessor had a series of models that he used to put up on the screen for us, and we could measure the effect of various percent increases or decreases in rates that I know Gary was looking for in the last term, and show what the cumulative effect of a 6% increase was this year, and how it accumulated, and if we put 6 in the following year, how that accumulated and went over the rest of it. Yeah, it's because and we could actually measure the cumulative effect on the existing 10-year plan. So I'm just wondering if those Excel models, because I think they were Excel spreadsheets, are still available, and I just wonder whether we shouldn't have an opportunity, and I don't know whether we're going to be able to do that tonight, but have an opportunity to see how, by varying the figures around each year, we can actually come up with maybe a series of increases over a short number of years that will give us the same outcome. Because I agree with Dave, it appears to me that this year we'll have a $2 million surplus. Next year, we have today a zero based budget, and then in the following year we will have this dip, which is this. I can't read it without my glasses, but
it's a $5 million
it's
deficit.
a $5 million drop, and then of course we will pick it up again in 2020, back with a 2 million or 6 between 2 and 6. So I just wonder whether we shouldn't perhaps have that information, because it will help us. The other questions that I've got is, does the 12% suggested there include the 3.8%?
Yes, it does.
So we're really only if we look at this next year's budget, it's about 8.2, isn't it, in terms of the increased revenue, because the existing budget and the budgets in the next year's build in the 3.8.
Yep.
Does it also include the targeted rate for the gardens?
No, because that's already included in the numbers, so it's not an increase.
So our increase is going to be more than 12%, isn't it? By the time you take into account the effect of the.
It's going to finish after 4 years.
Yeah, but is there another year to go?
Yeah, one
It goes next year.
Okay.
It finishes at the end of next year.
It'll have an effect in the second year, Rob, but not in the first year.
If we didn't accept this increase tonight, but we decided that we may need to do it in the 18-19 year, what would the effect be the same, that we would have next year, the year that we've approved or are approving tonight, we would have a zero-based budget, and then in the following year, in order to counter that up to $5 million deficit, which we may have a more clear indication of this time next year, if we increased the rates in that year, is the effect exactly the same, that it will provide the income in that year in which the deficit occurs?
Yes, it will provide. Yes, you're right.
So we could save the ratepayer a year of the increase by not increasing it tonight.
Yep. Yes, you would. It would save rate. The issue I have is basically the conversation I had this morning is that from a growth point of view, and if we have to have the discussion around the housing and infrastructure fund and so forth, our rates are just too low.
Yep.
And it's going to put our balance sheet under pressure from a debt to revenue.
So our ratio, it's our ratio that will come under pressure. I understand that.
That's what's driving me, Councillor.
Yep.
You're absolutely right. From a balanced budget point of view, you're spot on with your summation. But I'm being concerned about our debt to revenue ratio.
Our debt to yeah.
And if we come along to make a decision mid-year about our debt to revenue ratio, it's too late to put our rates up mid-year.
Yep.
And then we're in a position where we've got to try and then balance our investment in the housing infrastructure fund limited by our rates number. And that's what it's not a bob each way, but I'm trying to make sure we set ourselves up for as much success as possible.
But is it necessary to do that all in the first year or over 2 years? Because we're not going to have, even if we get the Housing Initiative Fund, we're not going to be spending it all, uplifting it all in the first year, in year one.
Yep, you're absolutely correct, Councillor McPherson. The challenge I have is being able to convince the rating agencies that we have an intention to at least try and manage our debt to revenue ratio, and that's all I'm trying to manage. I'm trying to put our best foot
the
forward.
increase over 2 years, where by the time we're starting to uplift the bulk of the Housing Initiative Fund, we've had the extra decent dollop of rates come in spread over 2 years.
Absolutely.
And we've had the whole lot that we, the whole 12%.
Yep, absolutely. The biggest challenge I've got is that clear indication to anybody will be in our 10-year plan, which will be after the period of time by which we put the bid in. So I'm just trying to manage as much of the optics as we can. You're right, but it is optics. And but ultimately, what's going to drive the amount of money we can borrow is our revenue as our baseline. I'm trying to make sure that's at a reasonable level to ensure that conversation is as robust as possible. But
if over 2 years, we've split the extra, because there's an extra 8.2% over 2 years, and then even if we go back to 3.8, we're built on top of a higher base because of that, and it'll be just as high a base as if we, by the third year, as if we did it all in the first year.
That's correct. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. There's nothing wrong with your logic, but
in the short term, our ratio won't be quite as strong as it would be if we went to 12% in the one hit.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
We,
How much of a risk is that in terms of the Housing Initiative Fund and the various agencies we have to answer to?
It is a risk. I can't comment on how big a risk it is, to be honest. It's the first time we put in for a funding like this. And like I mentioned earlier today, the rating agencies aren't consultants. They won't give a view until it's time to rate you. So
can we not express our intention in a resolution to do something in the second year that holds water?
absolutely, that has value as well. I still believe our rates are too low, and I think the rates were set too low. If we'd known the level of growth in 2012, we probably would have agreed at that time that our rates would have been too low at that point.
We would have done some catching up, but
Well,
the worry is whether you do the catch up all in 1 year or you spread it over 2 years, because you can't just think of the effect on the rating agencies and the government and that. What's the effect on the community?
That's right.
Can I make a couple of comments? Go if I can. I mean, what we've sort of been discussing probably actually isn't quite correct. So if we increase rates in the next financial year by effectively $12 million, then in the 2018 year we would have an extra $12 million, and in the 2019 year we would have that extra $12 million again, because it had set a new base. So in total, over 2018 and 2019, we would have an extra $24 million. So it's not the same as if we sort of spread that sort of rise over 2 years, because the extra 12 million would be then built into the base for 2019. And I think
you'd be behind half a $6 million.
That's right.
And that's all from the third year onwards. It'd be always just 6 million less than the.
And you're correct. And I think the other point I'd make is actually we can make decisions about rates in the next financial year, because actually that's part of this long-term plan that we're talking about, and that's the annual plan that we're talking about. In terms of making decisions now for rates in the 18-19 year, that's actually a decision for the 2018 long-term plan, not a decision for us to make.
Well, I'm not. That's where I'm arguing with you a bit, and ask the CEO, can we not make a decision now about our intentions for year 2 at least, even though it is, yes, it is part of that plan, but if we say up front we're signalling there's also going to be, for example, the same increase, so 9% this year, 9% next year, or whatever that sort of spread over 2 years figure comes out at.
So what we could do is essentially work out, we could work out that we wanted to do it over 2 years now, and then work out what that would mean for next year, and we can make the decision about next year, but we wouldn't be making a decision about the year after now, but we would have worked that into our calculations essentially.
Because there's the issue of turkeys not wanting to vote for an early Christmas, you see. It's all very well for the managers to sit here and say it's better and it's less risk to do it all now. There might be less risk to the management. Does council want to take the political risks of a rate increase that's so high?
I just wonder if
Dave,
anyone else is going
hang on, can I just...
I might ask some questions.
Sorry, Dave.
Gary's feeling pressed
wondering
here.
if anyone else is going to talk, or should we go?
Just hang on, Dave. Just
Oh, no, just open, seriously.
yeah, hang on, Dave.
I'll get my violin out.
Dave. There's probably a lot more political risk pushing a decision out till next year than there is this year. You don't have to comment on that. It's just putting it out there.
Yeah, I don't know, I agree with that.
I'm also quite uncomfortable about, well, I'm quite concerned about the HIF and how tight it's going to be. And by putting it through this year, when the HIF fund hasn't been approved and we're still putting up our final paper on it, this will go through as part of that as well. So I'm just saying it will help there. That's not what's driving it. It's got to be either this year or half this year and half next year, but there are political reasons why I think it's better to do it this year.
Well, I guess we're going to have to debate that, because I think there's some other risks that would outweigh that, but I want to let Gary have a say.
Oh, no, just keep going.
Philip's left. Oh, no, there he is.
Okay,
Just taking it this.
all right, Philip.
No, Gary's up.
Oh, Gary first, is it? Okay, Gary.
No, Philip was there.
Okay, Philip, sorry.
I just want to ask that above the graph, point number 9, second sentence, you're looking at the forecast to be in deficit. It's due to the budget amount for purchasing wheelie bin for rubbish collection. So that 5 million deficit is involved with the wheelie bin. But the wheelie bin is not a done deal yet, right? Are we going through for the wheelie bin now? Because we haven't made the decision on the wheelie bin yet, right? And I believe it's going to spread out for 4 years.
Yep. So a big, no, you're right, Councillor Young. So firstly, yes. And a big driver for me, as I've responded to Councillor McPherson's question, is not necessarily as much to do with balancing the budget target. That's definitely where I'm getting the numbers from. It's more about making sure that we've got our revenue set to the right level to ensure that we're managing our overall balance sheet as well in terms of the debt to revenue target as well.
So let's say if the wheelie bin is coming through target rate, lasts for 4 years. So that means we won't be having that deficit then.
And there's...
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we go down that review that's been suggested, it may well be that we have an increase this year. We might drop it back and replace that with a targeted rate for the year after. There's nothing precluding us from doing that. We're not going to double dip.
So that 12%, it seems it's a bit too early to make a decision on that, right?
Yep,
Before
so
we even decide the wheelie bin.
the origin of the 12%,
Yeah.
Mr Mayor, was the fact that the process for putting forward an increase. No, sorry, I've lost my point. Sorry.
No,
I'm
because the
half asleep
wheelie
now.
bin, we haven't made up decision or resolution on that yet.
Yep.
And now you're charging 12%.
Yep, but there's lots
But
to do
the
with the
bin
balance
is going
sheet.
to last, spread out for 4 years.
Yep.
So I don't know why we need to push it up now. I don't know.
The graph's there.
Mayor Andrew, I'm looking around the room, some of us are exhausted. Do you still want to press on with this, or is there any possibility we can push this to Thursday's agenda? I hate stopping halfway through questions and debates, but I think a few of us are pretty knackered, including staff who've been here all day. Your decision.
Well, I think we're right there. It's just a matter of debate and voting on this, where it's which way, and somebody, if you want to put an amendment up, I mean... Sorry? Yeah, okay. Gary?
Thank you. Just the approving the 12% rate increase, just I'm uncertain. Andrew's got a whole lot of targeted rates and things like that in here. That is an increase to existing of the general rate. Oh, well, sorry, the hybrid rate we've got at the moment.
Yes, but the answer to your question is yes.
And so that is before any of these things have been imported into there, is that right?
Yes, but I think what Mayor Andrew is suggesting, that if we adopt a targeted rate for wheelie bins, or for example, would reduce in future the general rate if it was...
Or you know, like changes in traditional rates, rural resident, those sort of things, which some of them are quite small, I appreciate, but
Yep.
they would reduce the 12%. The gross amount of extra rates would still be 12%. So if it's
Yep.
if it's 140, what are we, 140 times 0.1? So if it's 16, what's our rates? About 140 million, eh?
143 million or something to that effect.
143 times 0.12. So we're increasing rates by about 17 million.
Sorry, I was getting spoken to.
So
outside.
the intention is to increase overall rates, be it general rates or targeted rate. The inclusive of all of those things would be an increase of about 17 million. Is that the quantum you're...
That's the including GST number, yes. Because I think that
The what?
143 includes GST or not?
No, it won't be including GST.
No. I'm sorry. Yep.
Okay. So the $17 million increase will be made up of, if assuming we approve all of these, a little amount from the transitional rural residential, a little bit from rural rating to general rate, blah, blah. Not the gardens rate, because, there is still to continue the gardens rate. Recycling wheelie bin purchase rate, targeted rate for fund amenities, and that would be in certain suburbs. Is that right?
Yeah, but
So the goal is to get about 17 million extra in rates. Some of it through just everyone getting and then some of it will be through these other, maybe could be some of the mayor's initiatives here.
You just summed it up beautifully. Maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
Next year, are we actually going to have be brave enough to go with that policy? And
Okay.
we just don't know where this group are going to go with what's going to come back there. We don't even know what's going to come back once our plans come back. Those are just ideas at this stage.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. But so the big picture is that we think that if we want to stay balanced budget, we need another $17 million worth of rating revenue.
Based at the moment, it's 12% increase, and I might not have given the 143 million the right number to you, Councillor Malik, but it's a 12% increase, which is roughly about 12 million,
So the 12%, sorry, the 12% includes the 3.8, right?
Yeah.
So the 3.8, we've already banked into the plan the 3.8 increase, right? So what you're looking at is 3.8 increase. So this is coming down to the 8.2 differential.
Oh, yeah.
And so 8.2% on the 143 is about 11.7 million. So
That's
it's
right.
around the $12 million mark
That's right.
additional.
So Tracy, can you remember what are we going to collect this year? In 2017. The budget's about 143. Is that what I heard someone said?
Oh, I get the end of plan.
About 143. Okay. And that was going to go up by 3.8% anyway.
Correct.
And it will now, if this happens, it'll go up by 3.8% plus 8.2. But some of that 8.2, which equals 12%, but some of that 8.2 could be being collected through targeted rates and all these other things in here. Is that right? So that would not attack. That would not impact some of these. If these are all taken up, will just affect certain suburbs, won't they?
No, this is the LTP. Member?
Oh, that's right. This is
So
not even being considered at the moment, is it?
No.
Sorry. Is that right?
Right now, if you look at this graph,
Pardon?
right now, when you look at this graph, we're not in a healthy position.
Yep.
We're running zero budget,
Yep.
where we're supposed to be at 2 million.
Yep.
The year after, it's way down on where it's supposed. It just gets compounds and gets worse as we go forward. And we need to put it right now. We're in the middle of dealing with central government on $240 million land. We're not running to the budgets that we said we were going to do in the first place. This is a new council that can put the books in the right position to go forward. If we don't do it now and leave it till next year, we're going to be just compounding the problem as we go forward. So, I mean, I just urge you to be bold and be brave and put this through. It's a one-off. It puts our books back where they should be, and it puts us in a position where we can do targeted rates on other things. I mean, this doesn't allow for things like the $30 million for founders. The other things that are coming up, the big things that are coming up, we're going to have to address those with targeted rates. This doesn't fix the other things. This just puts us back where we should be now anyway. And yes, it might be a bit ahead of time, but we're in the middle of a HIF application and we need our books to look good going forward. And this is the chance to make our books look good. To put our books back where they should be, where we said they would be after, in the 10-year plan 2 years ago. So I'd urge you to be bold, be courageous and vote this through so that we can get back to where we should be. So when we're dealing with central government, our books are in order, because at the moment they're not. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Be helpful around procedures, and I think, you know, for debate, I'm more than happy to second the motion so that we get debate going. But I do think, in terms of good debate, and I'm mindful that there's one, possibly two members not going to be here. I want the full deck of cards. I want everyone, all members, to be making these kinds of decisions. And I think what some of us do want to ask is staff to look at the variance. Now, you may, in the end, have the numbers for 12%, but if you don't, I want to actually see what things start to look like at 8 or 9%, for example, in total, because trust me, even 8 or 9% is going to be a significant hit for a number of our ratepayers. You may, Your Worship, get the numbers for the 12%, but I think we're in a better position personally to adjourn this until Thursday morning, because I think there's still some questions that elected members want to ask staff members about what, as Councillor McPherson says, what spreading it over 2 years may look like. All right. Now that I absolutely accept that there can be a debate around this chamber of putting off the inevitable and all of that, but it's just a matter of the quality of information that we're now going to get from our staff, and I think the quality of decision making.
So what information do the members want for Thursday?
How you could get to the same end result spread over a period, what effect that has, not just on the finances, but also your Housing Initiative Fund application and your relationships with the auditing agencies and all that sort of stuff?
I think I'm very clear about what's needed. Councillor Dave's challenge has been very clear. Also, I think Councillor Rob's questions have been very clear as well.
Absolutely.
And so I would bring back some models that show various analysis, as well as various depth impacts on our debt to revenue ratio, our debt numbers, our rates, average rates and so forth, because I think that would actually give better information for a decision to be made.
Can I just suggest there, are those models that Paul Conda used in the last term, are they still available? Because he was able to put those up live when we asked him, you know, 7% or 8%.
We will create something.
Okay.
And the reason I'm saying we'll create something is that the person that does all our modelling, we unfortunately gave leave to, and so they're not back till Friday, Monday next week. So, but they are pretty simple models, and we're talking about absolute numbers. We don't necessarily have to have the full financial model behind them, and we'll be able to do something that will at least answer these questions at a high level and give you guys confidence when you're voting on it. But ultimately, you've got to remember that when you looked at my graphs at the very beginning of this conversation, our rates are short, and all we're trying to do is look at what we need to do to get us back onto an even keel before we start talking about the other investments we need to make. So I will update those graphs as well to reflect the 12% and see what it does and so forth, which is exactly what you're asking for, Councillor.
And it would be useful if it could go over the remainder of the long-term plan.
Absolutely.
So that we can actually see that we don't have to readjust this in 3 or 4 years' time to have to go back to a 10 or a 12% increase, because we haven't got the positioning of it right now.
Yep, and I still understand that the 2012 was robust if we'd had a better forecast on growth, to be fair. We never do, and that's the challenge. And to your point, Councillor Rob, we're never going to get a good handle on this stuff. So we do our best, and that's what this process is about, trying to get that right number in front of us.
Okay, so I move that the council adjourns the remainder of item 7 of the 2017-2018 budget review to the council meeting of the 9th of March 2017.
Andrew, is that the only remaining thing to do?
This is the last vote. Yep.
Sweet.
Plus the vote around.
So I need a seconder for that. Thank you, Siggy. All those for, any against? Thank you.
The motion was carried.